There are things that experienced homeschool moms know. And when we don't talk about those things very often, it can really feel to the younger homeschool moms or to the newer homeschool moms that they're failing because they're not doing these things or meeting certain benchmarks. So I think it's important sometimes to go back as more experienced homeschool moms and talk about those things that we have learned through years of experience. So this isn't just theory that I'm talking about, this is actual lived experience. And I have been doing this now for 10 years, which is crazy. It's January, so I'm just starting my 11th year of homeschooling. So if you've been homeschooling a while, you probably will recognize some of these things. If you're brand new, sit down, grab a cup of coffee or tea with me, and let's chat. So the first thing that I want to tell you is that curriculum is not a one-size-fits-all. The thing that fits my family may not fit your family. So, everybody always asks me, what do you use for this? And what do you use for that? That's great. And I'm more than happy to share, but just know that just because a curriculum fits one family doesn't mean that it's going to fit yours. And that's okay because every child is individual. And I have found that even in my homeschool, the curriculum that fits my oldest sometimes doesn't fit my youngest and vice versa. It can be all over the place, and that's fine. Again, kids are individuals. They're going to have different learning styles. They're going to have different preferences, and sometimes it doesn't fit. And also on that note, if the curriculum is not fitting your family, it is okay to change it even mid-year. Actually, January, which is right now, well, no, hold on. It's February now. It is February, so usually after Christmas is when I kind of really assess. I feel like after Christmas is done, I have really given that curriculum a try. I've really, really tried. And if I am still struggling with it, and I hate it, and my son hates it, and maybe the grades are kind of showing a little bit on that, maybe his retention is terrible, if it is making both my child and I miserable, that's usually when I switch and I say, okay, time to give something else a shot for a little while and see if we can maybe make this better. So it is okay to change your curriculum. You are not failing if you switch that out. Staying miserable does not help you out as a homeschool mom, and it doesn't make you a more faithful homeschool mom. It just makes you a more miserable homeschool mom. The next thing I want to talk about is the highs and lows. Homeschooling is just like any other relationship or friendship. You're gonna have highs and you're gonna have lows, and sometimes you just gotta keep your head down and keep moving on. That is the reality of the situation. Homeschooling will go in and out of seasons. There are gonna be some years that might be really difficult, and there might be some years where those are like your golden years. There was a year right after we moved into this house that was one of those years, and I just remember how much fun we had, and I wish I could go back to that because my kids were little. They were both still homeschooling, and I have one who's off being a firefighter and doing firefighter things, and I have one who is a big kid and already looking into dual enrollment and college scholarships, and I'm just like, where did my children go? So just remember, there's going to be great years and there's going to be years where you will probably struggle more than others. And that's okay. That's totally normal. The next point is to simplify when things are crazy. So there was a couple years where things just went completely out of whack for me. And I had a close family member die. That threw my entire homeschool year off because I just wasn't myself for months. So I ended up starting the year late, and then it kind of threw me off the entire year. There was another year where my youngest was in the hospital and my oldest had to tag along with us because the hospital was pretty far away because it was a specialty hospital, and we had to stay at hotels and things like that for quite a while, and he had to bring all of his homeschool books with him, and he really had to get creative to get his homeschooling done, and we made it work. But sometimes you just have to strip down and simplify those subjects, and that's what we did those years, and that really helped take the stress level down because I was focusing on very specific things rather than homeschooling as a whole. And that really took down a lot of the stress for me. So when things are really stressful and things are all out of whack, simplify your homeschool. It will help you out a lot. My next point is that homeschooling is flexible and you have to learn how to roll with the change. It's going to change, trust me. What works right now might not work in a year. And I have found that out firsthand because children grow and change. They're people, you know. Kind of like Charlotte Mason says, we are educating a whole child. So your child is going to change. The child that you have in 2nd grade is not the child that you're going to have in 11th grade. It's vastly different. Your homeschool is going to grow and change over the years, and you want it to. Trust me, you want it to. You don't want it to stay the same. It's hard to think of that, you know, when your kids are little, but it just happens naturally as they get older. Their needs are going to change, your methods are going to change, and you just have to learn how to be flexible with that. So go into every year and sometimes every school day remembering that their needs are going to be different than maybe they were the day before. But just remember that as your children age, they will get more independent. You will become more hands-off. And the goal should be kind of like as a child learns how to ride their bike. You know, you have the training wheels on at first and you're holding that back seat and making sure that they feel comfortable and safe, that they're not going to fall. And then the training wheels will eventually come off and you will kind of gradually step back as they learn how to ride on their own. That doesn't mean that you're not watching them out the window still, but it does mean that you are not holding their hand and holding the back of their bike seat anymore. You're letting them go. And that is really kind of this thing that I've thought about with homeschooling a lot, is just watching my kids kind of grow and blossom and be independent in their studies. And they've really taught themselves how to learn. And that's something that's really important, especially our kids who are going off to colleges and universities. We want them to be independent with their learning because they're not going to have someone holding their hand, especially if they're going to be doing what many colleges do now, which is online courses. They might have a video lecture, sure, but they're not going to have someone over their shoulder making sure that they take notes or, you know, making sure that all of their assignments are done. They're just going to have a due date and they're going to be expected to turn that work in. So I think of it, especially in high school, as college prep. I want to make sure that they are, you know, ready for that type of work. And for me, that really did work in my homeschool. And I'm really glad that we took those steps and that we made sure that they were a little bit more independent. So homeschooling works best when you stop fighting the change and you just kind of roll with it and just kind of let those kids blossom a little bit on their own. And one of the last things I want to say is that homeschooling takes courage and you should be commended for that. And I don't think that we hear that very often, because homeschooling gets so much flack on the internet. And I can say I know that firsthand because I deal with it on a daily, sometimes hourly basis. I get called all kinds of names and I get told all kinds of horrible things because I homeschool my kids. It is very strange. But I want to tell you that you are doing something brave and courageous, and you are, in your own quiet way, kind of fighting back against some of this culture war that we are involved in on a daily basis. And especially as Christians, this is one of the ways that kind of grounds us, by teaching our children. We're teaching our children the word, and we're teaching them what God says, and we're teaching them about God's world through our books. And it's just one of those quiet ways that moms can breathe, and I love that. I know that you probably get flack for it just like I do, and I just want to commend you and say, good job, Mom. You're doing something great for your children and for the kingdom of God, and to keep going, keep moving forward. So homeschool moms, tell me something that you have learned on your homeschool journey, especially for the younger ones who might be too scared to go into it or just going into their first year. Let me know down in the comments something that you could add to my list. I will see you guys in the next video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and happy homeschooling.